The night was heavy with the weight of unspoken secrets, as if the very air had been infused with the memories of countless ghosts. The rolling waves crashed against the jagged rocks below, their angry cries echoing through the ancient lighthouse that stood like a sentinel over the rugged coastline of Stormhaven. In the dim light of the flickering lantern, Evelyn Whitaker sat cross-legged on the dusty floor of the lighthouse keeper's quarters, lost in thought. Her mind drifted back to the day she had first arrived in this small fishing village, after leaving everything she had ever known, in search of adventure. The village was nestled between towering cliffs and crashing waves, and she had vowed that it would be the last place she ever called home because she was meant to move on to greater and grander things. But as she gazed out at the endless expanse of water, she couldn't help but wonder if her dreams of escaping Stormhaven and exploring distant lands would ever become a reality. The door to the quarters creaked open, and Captain Nathaniel Blackwood, the grizzled lighthouse keeper, strode inside. His face was weathered and lined, his eyes weary from years of tending to the ancient lighthouse that warned ships away from treacherous rocks. He paused for a moment, seemingly lost in thought, before shaking his head and moving toward the fireplace. As he knelt down, the light from the hearth flickered across his face, revealing a sharp nose and hooded brows. The same light cast long shadows that danced across the walls. Evelyn glanced up, watching as Captain Blackwood tended to the fire with practiced ease. She had always found him to be an enigma, haunted by a tragic past that he refused to discuss. It was as if the lighthouse, with its ancient history and mysterious secrets, was somehow connected to whatever it was that tormented him. She knew that she could never hope to understand the captain's inner demons, but she couldn't help but feel a strange sense of kinship with him, as if they were both outsiders looking in on a world that had forgotten them. And then, as if sensing her gaze, Captain Blackwood glanced over at her. His eyes met hers for a moment, and she felt a shiver run down her spine. There was something in his expression that made her wonder if he knew more about her feelings of restlessness and wanderlust than she had ever dared to admit. But before she could dwell on the thought further, there was a knock at the door, signaling the arrival of a new guest. "It's Sebastian Turner," came the captain's gruff voice from the other side of the door. "He's here to speak with you, Evelyn." Evelyn frowned, confused. Why had he come to see her? As she rose to her feet, she caught a glimpse of Captain Blackwood's face in the mirror above the fireplace. His eyes were narrowed, and there was a tense set to his jaw. Whatever connection there might have been between them before, it seemed to have vanished in an instant. "Come in," she said, steeling herself as she turned toward the door. The captain moved aside, and a tall, broad-shouldered man with dark hair and piercing blue eyes stepped into the room. He was dressed in fine clothes that were somewhat out of place in this rough and tumble fishing village. Evelyn couldn't help but feel a stirring of curiosity and apprehension as she studied his face. "Miss Whitaker," Sebastian Turner said, his voice smooth and cultured, "Captain Blackwood has told me much about you. It's a pleasure to finally meet you in person." His eyes roamed over her, taking in her appearance, and Evelyn felt a blush creep up her neck. She was dressed in a faded brown dress, which had seen better days, as it was mended at the elbows and the bottom of the skirt. She knew her hair had come loose from her braid in wisps and curls, which she now pushed away from her face with a pale hand. Captain Blackwood cleared his throat, breaking the awkward silence. "Well, I'll leave you two to it. If you need anything, just call for me." He nodded stiffly before turning and leaving the room, shutting the door behind him. From his demeanor, it was clear that he was unhappy with the circumstances. Evelyn waited until she heard the click of the latch before turning back to Sebastian. "And what is it that Captain Blackwood has told you about me?" she asked warily. She had the distinct feeling that this man knew more about her than she was comfortable with. Sebastian smiled, his blue eyes twinkling. "Oh, nothing too important, my dear. Just that you are a bright, intelligent young woman who has found herself in a place that does not appreciate your gifts. A misfit, if you will. And as someone who has spent many years feeling like an outsider myself, I could not help but be drawn to your story." His voice was earnest, and Evelyn felt a pang of sympathy for him. "Well," she said, sitting back down on the edge of the bed, I suppose I should thank you for your kind words. But I must admit, I'm not quite sure why you've sought me out. In the village, it is rumored that you are looking to employ someone, but I must confess, I'm not entirely clear on what that would entail. Sebastian took a step closer, his expression serious. I understand your hesitation, Evelyn. My organization, the Order of the Lighthouse, is dedicated to preserving and protecting the ancient knowledge and artifacts of the world. We have been watching you for some time now, impressed by your keen intellect and your unyielding curiosity. We believe that you would be an asset to our cause. He paused, waiting for her reaction. Evelyn felt a mix of excitement and trepidation in her chest. The idea of being part of something bigger than herself, of working alongside like-minded individuals, was certainly appealing. But she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this offer than met the eye. What sort of artifacts are we talking about? She asked carefully. And how would my duties as part of the Order differ from my work here at the lighthouse? Sebastian smiled reassuringly. I understand your need for clarity. The artifacts we deal with are of a nature that most people would find impossible to believe. They date back to the dawn of time and hold secrets that could change the course of history. As for your duties, they would involve researching and studying these artifacts, as well as assisting in their safekeeping and preservation. He took another step closer, lowering his voice conspiratorially. But more importantly, Evelyn, you would have the opportunity to travel the world, to see places and experience things that most people can only dream of. You would be part of a secret society, working alongside the most brilliant minds of our time. Imagine the stories you could tell, the adventures you could have. Evelyn felt her heart race at the thought. The idea of leaving this small, insular village behind and exploring the world was intoxicating. But she couldn't help but feel a nagging sense of unease. And what about Captain Blackwood? She asked, looking away. I've grown quite fond of him and his stories. I'd hate to leave him here all alone. Sebastian's smile faded, replaced by a look of understanding. I see. Well, I can assure you that Captain Blackwood is well aware of your feelings for him, and he has given his blessing for you to consider my offer. He understands that this is an opportunity for you to fulfill your destiny, and he would not stand in your way. Evelyn took a deep breath, her mind racing with the possibilities. The temptation was almost overwhelming. But she couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more going on here, something she wasn't being told. She looked up at Sebastian, meeting his piercing blue eyes, and knew that she had to be careful. All right, she said slowly. I'll consider your offer. But I want to know everything. About the Order, about the artifacts, and about what's expected of me. Captain Blackwood trusts you, and I trust him. But I need to be sure that this is the right decision for me. Sebastian nodded, seeming pleased with her caution. Of course, Evelyn. I understand your need for transparency. I will provide you with all the information you require. And if, after hearing everything, you still have questions or concerns, I encourage you to speak openly with me. The Order values honesty and integrity above all else. With that, Sebastian extended his hand, his grip firm and reassuring. Evelyn hesitated for a moment before taking it, feeling a shiver of anticipation run down her spine. This was the beginning of a new adventure, one that would take her far from the safety of her small, familiar world. But she couldn't shake the feeling that she was walking into the unknown, and that the fate of more than just herself hung in the balance. Over the next several days, Sebastian met with her again, sharing stories of the Order's history and its many remarkable accomplishments. He showed her ancient texts and artifacts, their intricate designs and cryptic inscriptions hinting at secrets that had been hidden from the world for millennia. He spoke of a hidden library deep beneath the ocean, its shelves lined with knowledge that had been gathered from across the globe, knowledge that could change the course of human history if it fell into the wrong hands. As she listened to these tales, Evelyn found herself torn between excitement and trepidation. On one hand, the idea of being a part of something so significant, so important, was intoxicating. She had always been drawn to the mysterious and the arcane, and the prospect of delving into the lost knowledge of the ancients was a dream come true. On the other hand, she couldn't help but wonder what dangers lay ahead, what price she might have to pay for this privilege. Finally, after much consideration, she made her decision. She would accept Sebastian's offer, joining the Order of the Lighthouse and embarking on this new and perilous journey. As she prepared to leave the lighthouse behind, she took one last look at the familiar surroundings that had been her home for so long, a lump forming in her throat. She knew that she would miss Captain Blackwood and the simple, quiet life they had shared here. But she also knew that the world was a vast and wonderful place, full of secrets waiting to be discovered, and that she was meant to be a part of it. The journey to the underwater library was long and arduous, taking them through treacherous waters and past ancient wrecks. Who could have thought that anything like this could be possible? As they approached their destination, Evelyn could see the immense structure looming out of the depths, its great towers and spires stretching up towards the light. The library itself was unlike anything she could have imagined, a vast network of halls and chambers filled with books and scrolls and artifacts from civilizations long since vanished. Sebastian took her on a tour of the library, introducing her to the librarians and scholars who dedicated their lives to preserving and studying the knowledge within its walls. They showed her the techniques used to preserve the fragile parchment and ink, and explained the complex system of cataloging and retrieval that kept the library's collection organized. As she wandered through the endless aisles, her sense of awe and wonder only grew. But with every new discovery, she couldn't help but feel a growing sense of responsibility weighing on her shoulders. She knew that the knowledge she was privileged to access was dangerous in the wrong hands, and that the Order's work was vital to preserving the world's fragile balance. She vowed to live up to their expectations, to learn all she could, and to protect the library with her life, if necessary. In the evenings, she would retire to her chambers, a small, cozy room carved out of the rock, overlooking the library's vast collection. Here, she would study the ancient texts and artifacts, slowly unraveling their secrets and learning the ways of the Order. She soon found herself immersed in a world of magic and mystery, the hours passing unnoticed as she lost herself in the ancient wisdom. One night, as she was studying a particularly intricate scroll, she felt a sudden chill run down her spine. She looked up, startled, and saw that the air around her seemed to shimmer and waver, as if a thin veil had been drawn between her and the world beyond. A figure began to materialize before her, its features indistinct and ghostly. It was a man, dressed in robes similar to those worn by the scholars of the library, but with a sinister air about him. His eyes blazed with a malevolent light, and his voice, when it finally came, sent a shiver down her spine. "You shouldn't be here, girl," he hissed. "This knowledge is not meant for the likes of you." Before she could react, he disappeared, leaving her alone once more, but with the unsettling feeling that she had just crossed paths with something dark and dangerous. Shaken, she returned to her studies the next day, determined to stay vigilant and not let her guard down. Over time, she continued to delve deeper into the library's ancient texts, uncovering secrets and techniques that had been lost to the world for millennia. She learned to manipulate the elements, summon spirits, and even peer into the minds of others. Her abilities grew steadily, and she soon found herself able to defend the library against any threat, both physical and magical. As she mastered her newfound powers, she also began to unravel the mysteries surrounding the Order of the Lighthouse. She discovered that they had been founded long ago by a group of sorcerers who had dedicated themselves to preserving the knowledge of the ancient world, lest it fall into the wrong hands. They had built the underwater library as a sanctuary, a place where the most dangerous and powerful artifacts could be kept safe from those who would use them for their own gain. One night, as Evelyn sat alone in her chambers, poring over an ancient tome, she felt a familiar chill run down her spine. The air around her shimmered, and the figure of a man appeared once more. This time, he was older and wiser, his eyes filled with a sadness that she had not seen before. "You have grown stronger, child," he said. "It is time for you to understand the true purpose of our work." And with those words, he began to tell her the story of the Order of the Lighthouse and the tragic fate that awaited them all should they ever fail in their duty. As he spoke, she felt a new sense of responsibility settle heavily on her shoulders. She knew now that the fate of the world rested on her and her fellow initiates, and that they could not afford to make a single mistake. Resolved, she set aside the ancient tome and climbed wearily into bed, dreaming of the challenges that lay ahead. In the years that followed, she continued her studies and training, honing her abilities and deepening her understanding of the Order's purpose. She met other initiates who had been brought up in the library, each with their own unique skills and talents. They became a close-knit family, bound together by their shared destiny and the knowledge they carried. One day, as she was exploring a forgotten corner of the library, she stumbled upon a hidden doorway that led to a chamber she had never seen before. Inside, she found a group of scholars huddled around a table, debating over an ancient scroll. As she approached, they looked up, startled, and motioned her closer. They revealed that they had discovered evidence of a powerful artifact hidden somewhere within the library's collection. One that, if fallen into the wrong hands, could bring about the end of the world. Together, they set out to find the artifact, using their combined knowledge and skills to track it through the labyrinthine stacks. After weeks of searching, they finally found it, hidden away in a sealed vault, guarded by powerful wards and traps. They worked tirelessly to disarm the traps and break the wards, each of them taking turns to guard the vault while the others rested. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, they managed to open the vault and retrieve the artifact. It was a simple-looking crystal, but its power was beyond measure. They carried it back to their chambers, discussing the best way to keep it safe and prevent it from falling into the wrong hands. As they spoke, they knew that their greatest challenge still lay ahead, to guard the library and protect the world from those who would seek to use the artifact for their own gain. Years passed, and the initiates of the Order of the Lighthouse continued their vigil, never allowing themselves to grow complacent in the face of an enemy that they knew existed, but could never quite pinpoint. They watched as the world around them changed and new technologies emerged, but they remained steadfast in their duty, trusting that their knowledge and their skills would be enough to keep the library safe. It came as no surprise, one day, when she was alone in her chambers, to feel that same shiver run down her spine. When she looked up, she saw the air around her shimmer, and the figure of the man appeared once more. This time, he was even older than the previous visit, his eyes filled with the wisdom of countless centuries. "You have grown strong, child. It seems I was wrong about you," he said. "You have protected the library, and you have protected the world. But the time has come for you to pass on your knowledge to another." And with those words, he disappeared, leaving her with a sense of both accomplishment and melancholy. She rose from her chair, her joints creaking from the weight of the years, and made her way to the chamber where the other initiates slept. She knew that it would be her duty to train the next generation, to teach them the secrets that had been entrusted to her, and to ensure that the Order of the Lighthouse would continue to stand as a beacon of hope in a world that was ever-changing, ever dangerous. And as she lay down to sleep, she knew that her work was far from over, but that she had earned her rest, and that the future of the world was in good hands. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it.